This startup is an innovative biotech company that figured out a way to use a naturally found compound, nitric oxide, to kill viruses. That company is SaNOtize, and we are now being joined by its co-founder and CEO, Gilly Regev. So jumping right in, SaNOtize has demonstrated its effectiveness at eradicating different types of viruses, including influenza and H1N1, just for examples. Right now, I know you're working on preventing and treating COVID-19 infections as well. Can you start off by telling everyone the origin of your company and how you came up with the ingenious idea of using nitric oxide?
Sure. So my co-founder, Dr. Chris Miller, has been in the nitric oxide field since 1990. He was involved in delivering the approved drug, the inhalation nitric oxide, to treat blue babies, so babies that are born with constricted blood vessels. We met in 2008 when we were looking at all kinds of ways to deliver nitric oxide without the gas cylinders. Chris and I started working together and came up with all kinds of different formulation, and then patented a formulation that we believed it was effective enough in eradicating different microbes and helping with cure infections. Then we started an animal health company and successfully delivered this liquid to cows as a nasal spray to prevent bovine respiratory disease. The idea was to reduce the use of antibiotic in cattle. In 2017, our human patent was granted in the US, and at that point, my husband said to me, "You guys really need to do something with it." And a little bit of a background, my husband is paraplegic, so I had been using this liquid on his feet to treat all kinds of cuts and wounds that usually get infected and take forever to heal. Needless to say, he was a big supporter and believer, and he kind of helped us see that this could dramatically improve quality of life of many, many people. So at that point, Chris and I decided to start SaNOtize. We completed athlete's foot study just to show that whatever we can see in the lab actually translates to the real world, to the clinical scenario. And we had very successful study. We showed that we can kill the fungus. And at that point, we really wanted to go into diabetic foot ulcer. Nitric oxide helps with wound healing, it reduces inflammation, it kills bacteria in the wound. So it can do a lot of good in diabetic foot ulcer. When we started looking into investment, we realized that diabetic foot ulcer was a little bit of a clinical trial graveyard, as many companies have failed in that. And it was tough to raise money on that. So we decided to kind of go back to our platform technology, and we chose two indications that have an unmet need and a large affected population. And these two are chronic sinusitis and onychomycosis, the nail fungus. We completed a phase 1 in sinusitis. We applied for a phase 2 from Health Canada. We got an approval, and we started our phase 2 in chronic sinusitis. And at that point, COVID hit.
If we can we get into the science just a little bit? And if you wouldn't mind explaining to our audience how your patented solution works.
Yes, so I think this is a video that we try to show how it really works in the lab. I can't show you how I eradicate the bacteria on my hand, but if you see here, we dip the hand in a solution with bacteria, put it on a petri dish, and then we repeated this with a hand sanitizer. So dipping in bacteria, using a hand sanitizer that's off the shelf. And then we used our gel and rubbed it on the hands after it was covered with bacteria, put it on a petri dish, and same thing with our solution, basically the nasal spray that we're using. So we repeated all that, we put it in the incubator overnight, and then we can show the results when we took it out of the incubator the next day. And you can see here that the control had a lot of growth in it of bacteria. And while the positive control, the hand sanitizer and our treatment had no bacteria at all that grew in it. So meaning that very, very quickly, in less than 30 seconds, we can eradicate a very high concentration of bacteria. And this is one example. It works the same way with fungi and with viruses.
And this can be administered both topically or through a nasal spray?
Yeah, so again, because nitric oxide is a natural molecule, we all produce nitric oxide in our body. We actually produce it more when we have an infection. That's the biggest secondary messenger in our body. So you can actually put it inside your body. So it's something that you can use as a nasal spray or a gargle, and this will eradicate the bacteria or the viruses wherever the liquid reaches.
We heard some good news from you last week. SaNOtize announced that it has been granted approval by Health Canada to conduct an efficacy trial for frontline antiviral prevention and early treatment for use against COVID-19. So can you tell us all a more detailed overview of how this exciting news came about and some of the unique challenges you face as a startup, which have developed an important niche in this space?
Yeah, so when COVID hit in about a couple of months ago, we said, okay, we should pivot and we should use what we have, which we always kind of had it on the side that can kill viruses to try and treat this. The first thing we did, we're doing two things in parallel. One thing is we found a lab that can external lab that can test the SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes the infection, the COVID, test it in the lab with our formulation. So we send them our formulation. They did in vitro testing in the lab to see if we can kill the virus. And at the same time, we wrote a full application to Health Canada to allow us to do a phase 2 trial. On the in vitro side, we got very strong results. We actually were better than the alcohol positive control. So within less than 2 minutes, we eradicated a very high concentration of virus, much more than what you would actually find in your nasal passages. And the second thing that we've done is we got the approval from Health Canada, which means that basically they agree that we have enough safety data to allow us to go into a full phase 2 clinical trial that is a multi-center 200-patient trial in Canada.
So coronavirus hopefully will not last forever. Where do you see the role of SaNOtize that will be playing in the ecosystem post-COVID-19?
Thanks. That's a good question. The original development of this was actually for a flu prevention. So the idea is that when you go to places where you might get infected, if you're on a plane, if you're going to your kids' daycare, you just get out, you spray this in your nose, and you kill the viruses at that point. There was a really interesting publication last week on Nature that basically emphasized and confirmed what we were suspecting. And their conclusion was that if you have any antiviral agent that can be administered in the upper airway, in the nasal passages, you can get rid of the disease. So this could use as prevention, but also as early treatment. So when you got infected early on, this can still eradicate the viruses before it becomes a full-blown infection. And again, I think that a flu prevention in the future, that's where we really want to go. And unfortunately, there'll be other pandemics. And then the beauty with nitric oxide is that it doesn't differentiate. It eradicates every virus we have tested it on, some depending on the dose and the time, but it will eradicate them all. Nitric oxide is being used today, even these days in clinical trials at hospitals to prevent COVID. It's in a clinical trial at Mass General right now with inhalation. The big difference is when you have to use the large cylinders with inhalation, then it has to be at the hospital. It's very expensive. The difference with our treatment is a simple nasal spray that everyone can have in their pocket, and everyone can do it at home.